Welcome back to the channel, guys. We're going to be doing something a little bit differently today. So a few days ago, I put out my full spoiler-free Vahrin Skull review, and I wanted to take a look at its main chapter bosses. I ranked them off of difficulty and give you guys some tips and tricks in dealing with them. So before we get into it, I just want to tell you guys that Vahrin Skull is comprised of a prologue, 10 chapters if you include the finale, and an epilogue, which is basically like free roam and cleaning up side quests. The epilogue, as well as chapters 4 and 8, don't have a capstone boss at the end, so in this video we're going to essentially be ranking the 9 main story bosses on how difficult they were and how much I enjoyed them. Now, full disclosure guys, the bosses for chapter 9 and obviously the finale are story spoilers, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to give you guys a warning before I rank them just in case you don't want to get spoiled, and there's always timestamps below if you want to skip that section entirely. And this goes without saying, but if you guys want the full spoiler-free review of Vahrin Skull, then check out that episode of Rabies Reviews, which I'll link in the top right card. Now, with all that being said, let's jump into it. Coming in at D tier, we have the chapter 6 boss, the Lingering Horror. We run into the Lingering Horror in the end of chapter 6 where the heroes are trying to shut down the tunnels to prevent more 8 spawn from coming into the world. Now, I don't know if it was my build or the general boss design, but about 2 seconds into the fight, I knew I wasn't going to die a single time to this thing. It's basically a spider whose body is exposed to the player while the legs surround it while delivering like slashing attacks. It can also body slam you after a delay, and that can be hard to dodge if you don't manage your stamina properly. Maybe I would have had a harder time with it if I was using ranged or magic, but since I was still using my greatsword, all I did was literally stand right under it and just slash it to death. Aside from the body slams and parrying the slashes, it didn't really have any other moves that I should be worrying about. Especially when you consider the fact that it spawns random zombies, I really get the feeling that this was supposed to check range users and buffer them from casting or firing, but with a fully spec'd greatsword, I deadass fought against regular mobs that were tougher than this boss. Next up is our first entry into the C tier, and that's Garbon. Garbon is a boss at the end of chapter 2 where we have to dispatch the rival mercenary groups, the Snatchers, for attacking the Combined Order allies. So even though this kind of big lizard with a shield becomes common the more you progress, the end of chapter 2 is the first time you run into this kind of enemy. He also has earth manipulation and can stunlock you with his ground slam, so you have to watch out for that. But if you're not dumb enough to swing into his shield, this boss honestly isn't that difficult. The trick with this boss is to strafe around his shield, especially after he attacks, and then pelt him with any sort of attack that you have, melee, ranged, or even magic. He's still an early game boss, and there are plenty of frames that he essentially stunlocks himself between big attacks, so it shouldn't really be a problem so long as you don't get impatient and waste attacks into his shield. I feel like the only thing he's testing is, are you stupid enough to waste stamina attacking into my shield? So as long as you don't do that, you're good. Accompanying him in the C tier as well is the Molten Worm from chapter 2. I guess the Molten Worm is the first proper boss you face after making it into Southvale, and it's essentially supposed to introduce you into the mercenary backdrop of Vahrin Skull. Now, all things considered, the Molten Worm has very interesting design, and it has a special burrow attack that you'll have to maneuver around. But aside from that, the tail swipes are mostly telegraphed and can be parried if you're just patient enough. Honestly guys, I think the worm is easier than Garbon, but I wanted to rank it a bit higher since its design and boss arena are much cooler than Garbon's. But aside from the dig attack and the fancy volcano backdrop, this boss isn't really anything too special. Alright, moving on to the first and only entry into the B tier, we have Sylvie, the prologue boss. She's interesting for 2 reasons. One, she's essentially the first boss of the game, so you have to fight her at the end of the tutorial. At the start of the game, it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to be using the quick select wheel or getting used to the combat, so she definitely forces you to consolidate everything you learn throughout the tutorial and apply it in this boss fight. Another reason she can be sort of difficult is that she's a mobile human enemy with lots of dashes to quickly catch up to you. I feel like she's kind of built to punish new players who freak out and start running away in fights, so you can actually use that against her. Essentially, staying close and not triggering her AI flowchart to drop into that dash move is a pretty good way to lower the chances of her using that move on you, especially if you can't just straight up beat her with parries and dodges. Keep in mind for new players, even though this game is advertised as a Fable remake, it has old school Souls combat, so stamina management, attack selection, and basic AI manipulation can come in pretty handy when clearing all the bosses, not just this one. Despite being a scary looking opponent, especially if you're new to Souls-like combat, she doesn't really have the most health and can be taken out with a bunch of well-timed hits. Now we'll get into A tier, starting with the Stone Watcher. At the start, it does this ridiculous spinning attack that will absolutely obliterate you if you're melee. However, that being said, it has 2 main weaknesses that can be exploited. The first is its HP. It's extremely squishy and doesn't take much to beat. Sure, it'll screw you over if you get too close to the spin move, but if you can manage to kite it out and attack it while it isn't moving, then you can beat it pretty reliably. And speaking of not moving, its biggest weakness is its ranged boomerang attack. It basically stuns itself until the boomerang comes back. So if you can dodge the boomerang and then pelt it with attacks in the 2 seconds it takes for the boomerang to come back, you'll finish it up in no time. Just maintain a healthy distance at all times so you don't get sliced up by the spin move and bait out the boomerang, and this boss falls relatively quickly. By the way guys, if you all are enjoying this video so far, like the video to boost it to other Vahrin's Call enjoyers, and subscribe to stay tuned to new episodes of Rabies reviews every single Sunday. And also obviously let me know if you want me to start branching out my tier list content as well, because I enjoy making these kind of boss tier lists. Our next A tier boss is a spoiler, so if you guys haven't made it past chapter 9 yet and want to avoid spoilers, then I suggest you skip this using the timestamps below. If you don't mind, then let's get into it. Our last A tier entry is Talscorn after he gets kidnapped and brainwashed. Now, by this point, I had already switched over to my range strategy, which I'll tell you about later. So I guess this fight wasn't as hard as if I had still been playing melee. He has a lot of attacks that interrupt and burn the ground in front of him, so I honestly don't know how I would have dealt with that if I was still committing to melee, but it would have probably involved like a lot of strafing. As for me, the thing I had to watch out the most for was this Millennia dive that he does, especially when fighting from ranged. It's not too hard of a timing to master, so just dodge that attack and either just wail on him while he recovers or create distance and start wailing on him with like range spells. Since I was using archery, having the bleed arrow really helped me eat through his health while still keeping me away from his disastrous short and mid-range attacks. If you guys aren't hard-locked into one specific style for whatever reason, I would suggest you go into ranged or even magic for this fight, or you'll be relying on pure mechanics checks or with like custom pots with fire resist to get past him with melee. Now, with all that being said, we'll get into the heavy hitters in the S tier, starting with Dirk the Flayer. Now, for what it's worth, Dirk is the first real challenge in Vahrin's Call. I would say Dirk is basically like the Super Saiyan version of Sylvia from the prologue. He's also a dash-heavy dual wielder with some range attacks as well, and the first boss that forced me to start using other systems like magic and custom pots. So I used some magic spells to increase both my offensive DPS with fire, as well as give me some extra DPS in melee with the stone circle. Although they helped increase my DPS on attack and do some chip damage when he got too close, it still wasn't enough to get me over the edge. So I ended up crafting my first custom potion, putting a single point in both slash and pierce resist so I can take a little bit less damage from his chain attacks while putting the rest into health boost so I can keep myself topped up. Alternatively, if you're confident in your dodging, you can put those resist points in your stamina region instead so you don't run out of stamina in the middle of his big 3-hit chain combos. Now Dirk is quite tanky and packs a punch, so you'll really need to watch your stamina and save at least a quarter of it for dodging and weaving so you don't just get like chain combo to death. As long as you prep accordingly, craft one of these 2 custom pots I talked about, and sneak in attacks as soon as he's ending his combos, you slowly whittle him down and eventually beat him. He's a chapter 3 boss, so unless you've done some very heavy exploring and side questing, I don't think you'll be initially equipped to deal with this encounter, and you'll have to figure him out slowly by dying. The next boss on the list is the final boss of Vahrin's Call, so once again, I'm giving y'all a few seconds to decide if you want to spoil yourself with this entry or not. You can always scroll down and skip this one. If not, let's get into it. Our next S tier entry and the second hardest boss in the game is the Queen herself. Her moveset actually reminded me a lot of Shaka from First Berserker Kazan. So before starting, there's a fast travel spot right next to her entrance, so if you haven't already, dump everything you have first and foremost. There's literally nothing else after her, so it would be beyond stupid to hoard gold or upgrade mats while still fighting her. You're essentially like leaving power on the table. As for pots, I would recommend 4 points in health, 3 points in stamina regen or focus regen, and at least 1 point in curse resistance. Her whole magic is cursed energy projectiles and elemental AoE, so having that resist can help because there are some attacks where I couldn't even figure out how to dodge properly and I just settled with like healing through them. One important thing to note with their curse magic is that once you get hit by it, it stops your healing for about a few seconds. This is really important to track during the fight because you don't want to waste pot charges once you're afflicted because you're essentially just like pissing them away. As for her movesets, she has this 6-chain combo where she flies at you horizontally 6 times before crashing down with like a magic burst. The dashes are pretty easy to avoid, but I could not find a way to avoid her stomp at all. No matter if I tried dodging, parrying, or even trying to jump over it, it just like did not work. She has this Renala style projectile burst that she does, which can be really bad if it lands, but it can be easily avoided if you just like run laterally, no dodging required. She has a quick laser shot that might catch you off guard the first few times against her, but is actually her easiest spell to dodge, and if you're playing ranged, is your best time to counter with attacks of your own. But perhaps her most sinister attack, and thank god I was in melee for this fight, is this cursed magic virus she spreads on the ground for a few seconds. It does damage over time and again cuts off your healing, and I honestly have no idea how the hell you're supposed to do anything to her while it's active, especially if you're melee. For range, this is obviously the best time to hit her because it's essentially a slow tendril attack with her as the origin, and I got the most of my DPS across as she's stunning herself casting it. But I feel like the biggest thing that separates her from number 1 on this list is simply how many more frames and windows you have to punish her. Sure, the heal cut is annoying as hell and her attacks are very long chain combos where essentially you just can't fight back and have to constantly dodge, but she has more windows of opportunities to attack her back. As long as you max out your stats before the fight, have a pot with stamina regen and curse resistance, and don't take unnecessary damage from her easier attacks and have just like a bit of patience, you'll eventually grind her out. And closing out our tier list with arguably the best boss in Vahrin's Call and the one that forced me into a ranged combat style because literally nothing else was working is the Fallen Champion from Chapter 7. Yeah, so advice at the start of this segment, if you're thinking of fighting it with melee, don't. Even though it doesn't have any ranged attacks, Fallen Champion has a lot of chain combos, delayed dash chain combos, and even a mid-range CC swipe that makes it a nightmare to deal with. It's so insane because I had a borderline maxed out greatsword while fighting it, and the best I could do was get it down to like 25% HP. I switched over to my level 8 not even upgraded bow and killed it in like 2 tries. He really punishes melee users, and it's honestly what opened my eyes to just how hard melee users have it, and they're just like essentially playing this game on harder difficulty when it comes to these boss fights. He has 4 different chain combos and there isn't really much of a way to tell the difference between their initial attacks, so either don't be in range or you have to react, parry, or dodge. It starts randomly screaming once per fight, and this is a good chance to sneak some hits in. I wish it did this more, but it only happens like once per fight, and so you better get your licks in while you still can. The attack that leaves it most vulnerable is a short side swipe followed by a long range dash, specifically for countering ranged. Similar to Talscorn, if you can nail the timing on the spell, you can keep dodging it and peppering it with attacks while it recharges its animations. If you're ranged, it basically becomes a cheat code with how the AI works. The attack has a higher degree of proccing when you're farther away, so if you can proc it, dodge, run away, and shoot it, it'll be very likely to wind up the same attack again, essentially chain locking itself with the same telegraph attack over and over again, which is why I think it's so weak to ranged. I highly recommend stamina regen potions for this one because you're going to be doing a lot of running and dodging. On top of the bullshit it already does, it's also tanky, so even if you're a mage, I think you're probably going to need some kind of focus regen to constantly pump out the spells and eventually kill it. Well guys, there you guys have it. Full tier list for all the main bosses in Vahrin's Call. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys made it this far, like the video to boost it to other VC enjoyers, and subscribe to catch more of my videos every single Sunday. Usually I review games and rank it on my tier list, so this is a bit different from what I usually do. But let me know if you guys want to see more of this kind of content as well. I really just enjoyed making this. I leave my Rabies Reviews playlist here for you guys, as well as my recent full review of Vahrin's Call itself. It covers every single possible facet of the game you can hope to learn about, and it's completely spoiler free. So give it a watch if you're still not sure about buying this game yet. I'll see you guys there. Peace.